She will be your new housekeeper. Jared Ellison Pierce just stared at his uncle like the man had walked into his Seattle mansion and announced he was adopting a giraffe. Then slowly, his gaze shifted to the woman standing beside Uncle Reg, the woman he had just introduced as his new housekeeper. She was holding a beat-up suitcase that looked like it had survived 2 world wars and a tornado. Her hair was interesting. Shaved close on one side, longer on the other, dyed a deep red. The kind of punk hairstyle that said, "I make my own rules and I don't care what you think about it." No makeup. She was wearing an oversized white t-shirt that looked like she'd stolen it from a man twice her size. Baggy cargo shorts that hit just above her knees. Beat-up sneakers that had seen better days. Jared let his eyes travel over her with the cold, clinical assessment he usually reserved for disappointing quarterly reports. Her face was fine. More than fine, if he was being honest. Sharp cheekbones that could cut glass. Full lips, skin the color of warm honey, and eyes that were so brown they looked gold in the light, watching him right back with an expression that wasn't nervous or eager to please. It was almost challenging. But her body? Jared nearly laughed. Even through that tent of a t-shirt, he could tell there was nothing happening up top, flat as an ironing board, and those baggy shorts swallowed whatever hips she might have had, if she had any at all. The only things visible were her legs. Long, lean, going on for what seemed like miles. She was tall. Way too tall. She had to be at least 5'10". In heels, she'd probably look him dead in the eye. Jared liked his women curvy, soft, petite, the kind of women who fit perfectly in his arms, who had hips that swayed when they walked, and curves that filled out a dress. He didn't mind if they were a little on the heavier side. Preferred it, actually. This woman was the exact opposite of everything he found attractive. She was shaped like a teenage boy who'd hit a growth spurt and never filled out. "Her name is Sadie," Uncle Reg was saying. "She'll be living in the staff quarters and—" "No," Jared said, cutting him off. "I disapprove." The word cut through the air like a blade. Sadie's eyebrows rose slightly, but she didn't flinch. Didn't look away. Jared was already turning toward the grand staircase that led to the upper floors. "She can't stay. I don't want her here." "Jared, I said no. And I said she's staying." Uncle Reg's voice hardened in a way that made Jared pause mid-step. "I already paid her, up front, for an entire year." Slowly, Jared turned back around. "You did what?" $80,000. 1 year's salary, paid in full." Uncle Reg crossed his arms over his chest. "She's not going anywhere." $80,000. His uncle had spent $80,000 on a housekeeper without even consulting him? Jared's jaw tightened. "Then get a refund." That's when Sadie spoke up. Her voice was low, steady, completely unbothered by the tension crackling through the foyer. "I can't give a refund." Jared turned those cold, dark eyes on her. She met his gaze without flinching, without shrinking, without any of the nervousness or eagerness that he was used to seeing in people who worked for him. "Excuse me?" he said. "I said I can't give a refund." She shifted her weight slightly, still holding that beat-up suitcase. "I've already spent more than half of it." "You've spent $40,000 in—" Jared looked at his uncle. "How long has it been since you paid her?" "A week." "You've spent $40,000 in a week?" Jared's voice dripped with derision. "On what? Designer drugs? A shopping addiction?" Something flickered in Sadie's eyes then. Something hot and dangerous that was there and gone so fast Jared almost missed it. But her voice stayed calm. "My brother's education," she said. "Tuition, books, room and board, everything they need to stay in school." She paused. "Not that it's any of your business what I spend my money on." Jared blinked. Did his new housekeeper just tell him to mind his own business? "But I promise to serve you well, Master Jared," she continued, and there was something in her tone that made the formal words sound almost mocking. "I'm a hard worker. I won't cause any trouble." Jared stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned back to his uncle. "I want her gone. Today." "Not happening." "Uncle Reg?" I said no. Uncle Reg took a step closer, his voice dropping low. "You want to have this conversation? Fine. Let's have it, but not in front of the staff. He looked at Sadie. Why don't you make yourself comfortable? The living room is through there. I'll have someone show you to your quarters shortly. Sadie hesitated for just a moment, her golden brown eyes moving between the two men. Then she picked up her suitcase, gave a small nod that was somehow both polite and dismissive, and walked away. Her footsteps echoed on the marble floors. Confident, unhurried, like she had every right to be there. The moment she disappeared around the corner, Uncle Reg rounded on Jared. I am done. His voice was low but intense. Do you hear me? Done. Jared opened his mouth, but his uncle cut him off. Do you have any idea what I've been dealing with for the past 2 years? Do you have any idea how many messes I've cleaned up because you can't keep your hands to yourself? That's a bit dram. 37. Uncle Reg held up a finger. 37 housekeepers in 4 years. 37 women who came here to do a job and ended up in your bed instead. Jared shrugged. They were willing participants. They were your employees. Uncle Reg's voice rose. And you charmed them, you seduced them, you made them think they were special, and then you got bored and threw them away like they were nothing. I never promised anyone anything. You didn't have to promise them anything. You smiled at them, Jared. You looked at them with those eyes and made them feel like they were the only woman in the world. And then when you were done with them, I was the one who had to deal with the fallout. Uncle Reg started pacing, his hands gesturing wildly. The crying, the screaming, the threats to go to the tabloids. Do you remember Christina, the one who keyed your Porsche? Or Monica, who tried to throw herself off your balcony when you ended things? And this is my personal favorite, the time 2 of your housekeepers found out about each other and had a fist fight in your kitchen? Jared winced slightly at that one. I have a wife, Jared. I have children. I have a family that I am trying to raise and a business that I am trying to help you run. I do not have time to babysit a grown man who thinks with his... Uncle Reg stopped himself, taking a deep breath. I'm tired. I'm so tired. Jared said nothing. Because what could he say? It was all true. That woman in there, Uncle Reg continued, pointing toward the living room, is my solution. I found her 3 weeks ago at a restaurant downtown. Some drunk was harassing one of the waitresses, getting in her space, grabbing at her. Nobody was doing anything about it. And then Sadie walked over. What did she do? Jared asked. I uncharacteristically intrigued. She grabbed a pitcher of ice water and dumped it over his head. When he tried to grab her, she put him on the ground so fast I didn't even see how she did it. Had his arm pinned behind his back and his face pressed into the floor. Uncle Reg almost smiled at the memory. Martial arts. The girl knows how to handle herself. Jared processed this information slowly. So you hired her because she can beat people up? I hired her because she's exactly what you need. Uncle Reg walked over to the bar cart in the corner and poured himself a whiskey. Look at her, Jared. Really look at her. Punk hair, no makeup, baggy clothes, built like a beanpole. She's the complete opposite of every woman you've ever chased. I noticed. Good, because that's the point. Uncle Reg took a long sip of his drink. At least with someone like her, someone you aren't attracted to, handling your home, you might finally have some organization in your life. She'll do her job. She won't fall for your games. And maybe, just maybe, you can focus on running your father's company instead of turning your house into a revolving door of broken hearts. Jared's jaw tightened at the mention of his father. And if I refuse to keep her? Then you can find yourself a new business partner. Uncle Reg set his glass down with a decisive clink. I mean it, Jared. I'm at the end of my rope. Keep Sadie for 6 months. Prove to me that you can have a woman in your life, in your home, without turning her into another conquest. If you can do that, I'll know there's hope for you yet. And if I can't, then I'll know I was right to give up on you. The words hung in the air between them, heavy and final. Uncle Reg grabbed his coat and headed for the door. He paused with his hand on the handle. Give her a chance, Jared. She might surprise you. The door closed behind him. Jared stood alone in the foyer of his massive mansion, surrounded by marble and expensive art and all the trappings of wealth that he'd worked so hard to maintain. And all he could think about was the way his new housekeeper had looked at him. Like she wasn't impressed. Like she wasn't intimidated. Like she didn't care who he was or how much money he had. Fine, Jared murmured to himself. His uncle refused to fire her, huh? Jared would just make sure Sadie quit herself. And all he has to do was give her a hard time. In the living room, Sadie dropped onto a leather couch that probably cost more than her father's beat-up Volkswagen and let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "Arrogant jerk," she muttered under her breath. She pressed her palms against her face, replaying the conversation in her head. "I don't want her here." He'd said it so casually, so dismissively, like she was a piece of furniture that didn't match his decor. She'd seen the way he looked at her, too. That slow, clinical once-over. The slight curl of his lip when he took in her clothes, her hair, her body. He thought she was ugly. No, worse than ugly. He thought she was beneath his notice. Sadie was used to that look. She'd been getting it her whole life. Too tall, too flat, too boyish, not feminine enough, not soft enough, not enough. Period. It used to hurt. When she was younger, she'd cry about it. She'd stuff her bra and try to walk in heels and wear dresses that made her feel like she was playing dress-up in someone else's clothes. But somewhere along the way, Sadie had stopped caring. Or at least, she'd gotten really good at pretending she didn't care. She has embraced the tomboyish look. What was the point of wearing feminine clothes if they were just going to make you look laughable? But maybe she should have worn something more dignified for meeting her boss the first time. She sighed. It was too late to quit now. She thought about the money she'd already spent. $40,000. Her parents had died in a car accident 10 months ago. In one moment, they were driving home from a date night, their first one in years. And the next, Sadie was standing in a hospital hallway being told that they were gone. Both of them. Just like that. She'd been 24 years old, suddenly responsible for her 16-year-old twin brothers. Malachi and Micah, her babies, her whole world. The boys were brilliant, top of their class, full of dreams about going to college, becoming engineers, building things that mattered. But dreams cost money, and their parents hadn't left much behind except a mortgage that Sadie could barely afford. But she couldn't bear to see her brother's dreams die along with her parents. So when a kind older man had approached her at the restaurant where she worked, offering her a housekeeping job with a year's salary paid up front, Sadie had thought it was a miracle. She'd used that $40,000 to get ahead on bills, to set up a college fund for the twins, to buy them new laptops for school, to finally breathe for the first time in almost a year. And now she was stuck here, working for a man who'd made it crystal clear he didn't want her. "Too bad," Sadie whispered, a hint of steel creeping into her voice. "You're stuck with me whether you like it or not, Master Jared." She wasn't going anywhere. Let him throw his little tantrums. Let him look at her like she was nothing. Let him try every trick in the book to make her quit. Sadie Monroe didn't break. Not for anyone. Okay, y'all. If you think Jared Ellison Pierce needs to be humbled in the worst way possible, I need you to drop "Humble Him Sadie" in the comments right now. And hit that subscribe button because the way this woman is about to turn his world upside down, you do not want to miss it. The first week was interesting. Jared had clearly decided that if he couldn't fire Sadie outright, he would make her life so miserable that she'd quit on her own. It started small. On her second day, he called her into his home office at 6 in the morning, an hour before she was scheduled to start, to inform her that he needed his entire wardrobe reorganized by color, then by fabric weight, then by season. "By noon," he added, already turning back to his computer. That shouldn't be a problem, should it? Sadie had looked at the walk-in closet that was bigger than her childhood bedroom, filled with what had to be hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of designer clothes. "No problem at all. Aunt Master Jared," she'd said sweetly. She'd finished by 11:30. When Jared came to inspect, he'd found every single item perfectly organized, pressed, and arranged. Sadie was sitting on the closet floor, eating an apple and reading something on her phone. "You missed a spot," he said. Sadie looked up. "Where?" He pointed vaguely at a rack of suits. "There." Sadie stood up, walked over to the rack, and examined it closely. Every suit was in perfect order. "I don't see anything wrong. The navy and the midnight blue are switched." Sadie looked at the two suits in question. They were identical in color. There was absolutely no difference between them. She looked back at Jared, one eyebrow raised. "My mistake," she said, her voice completely flat. "I'll fix that right away." She switched the two identical suits. "Aren't you better?" Jared's eye twitched in annoyance. Fine. He walked out. Sadie waited until she heard his footsteps fade down the hallway. Then she let out a snort of laughter. Navy and midnight blue, she muttered. Boy, please. On day 3, he complained that his breakfast eggs were too runny. On day 4, he said they were too hard. On day 5, Sadie made the eggs exactly the same way she had on day 3, and he said they were perfect. She didn't point out the inconsistency, just smiled and said, I'm so glad you're satisfied, Master Jared. Something about the way she said it made his jaw tighten. Good. By the end of the first week, Sadie had figured out the game. Jared wasn't actually upset about the eggs or the closet or the way she folded his towels. He was testing her, pushing her buttons, waiting for her to snap or cry or quit. But Sadie had spent her teenage years dealing with mean girls who made her feel worthless for not having the right body, the right clothes, the right look. She'd spent her early 20s working 3 jobs at a time, dealing with handsy customers and condescending managers and people who thought they could treat her like garbage because she was just a waitress. Jared Ellison Pierce, with his pretty face and his cold eyes and his petty complaints, was nothing compared to what she'd already survived. So she smiled. She stayed calm. She did her job flawlessly. And every time he tried to get a rise out of her, she responded with the same infuriating politeness. Of course, Master Jared. Right away, Master Jared. Whatever you say, Master Jared. By day 10, she could see the frustration building behind his eyes. He wasn't used to this. Wasn't used to someone who didn't crumble under his cold stare. Wasn't used to someone who gave back exactly what he dished out, wrapped in a bow of sweet professionalism. Sadie was getting under his skin, and she was enjoying every minute of it. But the real battle began in week 2, when Jared started bringing women home. The first one showed up on a Tuesday night. Sadie was in the kitchen, finishing up the dishes from dinner that Jared had barely touched before leaving the table without a word, when she heard the front door open. Voices, laughter, the click of high heels on marble, and then Jared's voice, low and smooth in a way she'd never heard before. Make yourself comfortable. I'll get us some wine. Sadie's hands stilled in the soapy water. A moment later, Jared walked into the kitchen. He was wearing a black button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing forearms that were frankly more muscular than Sadie had expected. His fade was fresh. His goatee was perfectly trimmed. He looked like he'd just stepped out of a magazine shoot. And he was smiling. Not the cold, dismissive smile he gave Sadie. A real smile. Warm. Charming. The kind of smile that probably made most women forget their own names. Sadie. He said her name like it was an afterthought. There's a lady in the living room. Bring us a bottle of the Chateau Margaux and 2 glasses. Sadie dried her hands slowly. Of course, Master Jared. She found the wine in the cellar, poured 2 glasses. Eisen carried them out to the living room. The woman on the couch was stunning. Petite, maybe 5'2", curves for days, skin the color of dark chocolate, hair in long, flowing braids that fell past her shoulders. She was wearing a fitted dress that hugged all the right dips and curves, and she was looking at Jared like he was a 5-course meal and she was starving. Exactly Jared's type. Sadie set the wine glasses down on the coffee table. Will there be anything else, Master Jared? He barely glanced at her. That'll be all? Sadie walked away, keeping her expression perfectly blank. But as she passed by the couch, the woman looked up at her. Oh my God, the woman said. I love your hair. Sadie blinked. I'm sorry? Your hair? The woman gestured at Sadie's punk cut. That's so bold. I could never pull that off. But it looks amazing on you. Behind the woman, Jared's smile had frozen in place. Sadie felt her own lips twitch. Thank you, I like your braids. These? The woman touched her hair. Girl, I sat in a chair for 5 hours. You know how it is. I really don't, Sadie admitted. My hair's too silky to do much with. The woman laughed. Lucky you. I'm Destiny, by the way. Sadie. Sadie, that's cute. Destiny leaned forward, her eyes bright. Okay, I have to know. Where did you get those shorts? I've been looking for a good pair of cargo shorts everywhere, and I can't find any that don't look stupid on me. These? Sadie looked down at her baggy cargo shorts. I got them at a thrift store in Tacoma. They're men's shorts, actually. They have better pockets. Men's shorts. Destiny clapped her hands together. That's genius. Men's clothes always have better pockets. I'm literally taking notes right now. Jared cleared his throat. Destiny? Hold on, babe. Destiny waved him off without even looking at him. Sadie, do you have Instagram? I need to follow you. Sadie did, in fact, have Instagram, though she rarely posted anything. But the look on Jared's face was so priceless, that mixture of confusion and annoyance, and something that might have been jealousy, that she couldn't resist. Sure, she said, pulling out her phone. What's your handle? They exchanged information right there in the living room, with Jared sitting on the couch looking like he'd swallowed a lemon. Perfect. Destiny tucked her phone away and finally turned back to Jared. Sorry, babe, you were saying? Jared's smile was strained. Nothing, just I'm admiring how well my staff socializes with my guests. Oh, stop. Destiny swatted his arm. Sadie seems cool. Don't be weird about it. Sadie had to physically turn away to hide her grin. I'll be in the kitchen if you need anything, she said, and made her escape. Later that night, after Destiny had left, alone, Sadie noted with interest, Jared found her in the kitchen. What was that? He demanded. Sadie looked up from the counter she was wiping down. What was what? That whole bonding thing with Destiny. She complimented my hair. I complimented her braids. We exchanged Instagram handles. Sadie shrugged. I believe it's called making friends, Master Jared. Some of us do it naturally. His jaw tightened. She was my date. And? I'm not trying to steal your date. She's not my type. Sadie paused. Also, I don't swing that way. But if I did, I think I could do better than someone who lets you boss them around all evening. For a moment, Jared just stared at her. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. It wasn't a warm laugh. It was short, sharp, surprised, like she'd caught him off guard. You really don't care, do you? He said. Care about what? About impressing me, about keeping your job, about any of it. Sadie put down her rag and looked at him directly. Master Jared, I care about doing my job well. I care about earning the money that pays for my brother's future. But caring about impressing you? She tilted her head slightly. With all due respect, you haven't given me any reason to care about that. The air between them shifted. Something flickered in Jared's dark eyes. Something that wasn't annoyance or dismissal. On something almost like respect. Good night, Sadie, he said finally. Good night, Master Jared. He walked out of the kitchen. Sadie let out a slow breath. Round 1. Sadie. He brought more women over after that. 3 more in the following 2 weeks. Each one more stunning than the last. Each one exactly his type. Petite, curvy, gorgeous. And each time, somehow, the evening ended with the woman chatting with Sadie instead of focusing on Jared. There was Monique, who was fascinated by Sadie's martial arts background and wanted to know where she trained. There was Jasmine, who loved Sadie's sarcastic sense of humor and spent half the night laughing at her observations about the ridiculous shows that were popular. And then, there was Alexis. Alexis was different. She was tall, nearly as tall as Sadie, with short natural hair and an androgynous style that Sadie secretly admired. But she was shapely, an hourglass figure women would die for. She worked in fashion, she said, and she'd been drawn to Jared at some charity event. But from the moment she walked into the mansion, her eyes kept drifting to Sadie. Not in a threatening way, in an interested way. I love your whole vibe, Alexis said, while Jared was in the other room taking a phone call. Like, the tomboy thing. It's really working for you. Thanks, Sadie said, a little uncertainly. Can I be real with you? Alexis leaned closer, lowering her voice. I don't think I'm that into him anymore. I thought I was, but... She glanced toward the door where Jared had disappeared. He is attractive, sure, but he's kind of intense, almost intimidating. I can't guess what's going on in that head of his. Sadie bit her lip to keep from laughing. But you, Alexis continued, turning back to Sadie with a smile. You seem fun. We should hang out sometime. Get coffee or something, or... She paused, her smile turning slightly flirtatious as she leaned in further. Something more, if you're into that. Sadie's brows shot up. Oh. It wasn't the first or even the 20th time women hit on her. Her style seemed to mislead a lot of people into thinking that she would prefer to date women instead of men. It always shocked people to know that she had had ex-boyfriends. Sadie felt her cheeks warm. That's really flattering, but I don't swing that way. No? Alexis didn't seem offended. If anything, she seemed amused. Damn, the cute ones never do. She pulled out her phone. Can we at least be friends? I could use more people like you in my life. People like me? Real, honest, not impressed by money and status. Alexis shrugged. It's rare in this city. They exchanged numbers. When Jared came back from his phone call, he found Alexis and Sadie deep in conversation about the best thrift stores in Seattle. Am I interrupting something? He asked, his voice tight. Nope, Alexis said cheerfully. Just making a new friend. Sadie's great, by the way. You should be nicer to her. Jared looked at Sadie. Sadie looked at Jared. Neither of them said anything. But something in the air had shifted again. That night, after Alexis left, also alone, Jared didn't come to the kitchen to confront Sadie. She went to sleep with a strange warmth in her chest. Maybe this job wouldn't be so bad after all. If you're laughing at Jared's epic failure to make Sadie jealous or uncomfortable, drop backfired in the comments. And I need everyone to like this video and subscribe because the tension between these two is building and building, and something is about to be broken by a spider. The spider incident happened on a Thursday afternoon. Sadie had been working at the Ellison Pierce mansion for almost 6 weeks by then. 6 weeks of cold shoulders and petty complaints. 6 weeks of failed attempts to make her jealous with beautiful women who somehow always ended up on her side. 6 weeks of a strange, simmering tension that crackled between them like static electricity before a storm. Things had shifted lately. The open hostility had faded into something more like reluctant tolerance. Jared still made snide comments about her cooking and her cleaning and her questionable fashion choices. But the complaints had less venom now. And sometimes, rarely, but sometimes, Sadie caught him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. She was cleaning his home office that Thursday, with permission this time. He was supposed to be in meetings downtown all day, which meant she could work in peace without him hovering and criticizing every move she made. The office was ridiculous, of course. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Puget Sound. A mahogany desk that probably cost more than most people's cars. Built-in bookshelves lined with leather-bound books that actually looked well-read, their spines cracked from use. And in the corner, a private bathroom bigger than Sadie's entire childhood bedroom. She was halfway through dusting the bookshelves when she heard the front door open downstairs. Footsteps. Heavy. Quick. Taking the stairs 2 at a time. Jared appeared in the doorway of his office, still wearing his charcoal gray suit from his meetings. His tie was loosened, the top button of his shirt undone. His fade was immaculate as always, his goatee perfectly groomed. Even disheveled, the man looked like he belonged on a magazine cover. But something was off. His jaw was tight, his shoulders were rigid, and his eyes, those dark, intense eyes, were distant, distracted. You're back early, Sadie observed, not stopping her dusting. Meeting ran short. He walked past her toward his desk without making eye contact. I need to make some calls. Finish cleaning later. I'm almost done. Just need to... Later, Sadie. Sadie's hand stilled on the bookshelf. He said her name. He never said her name. It was always you or staff or, on particularly annoying days, the housekeeper. She turned to look at him properly. He was standing at the window now, his back to her, hands shoved deep in his pockets. The tension radiating off him was almost visible. Something was definitely wrong. But Sadie knew when to push and when to retreat. Whatever was eating at him, he clearly didn't want to talk about it. Fine, she said, gathering her cleaning supplies. I'll come back in an hour. She was almost to the door when she heard it. A sound that made her freeze in her tracks. A sharp intake of breath. A muttered curse. And then, movement. Rapid, startled movement from the direction of his private bathroom. Sadie spun around. Jared had stepped into the bathroom, probably to splash water on his face, but now he was backing out of it with a speed that didn't match his usual controlled demeanor. Like, what's wrong? Sadie demanded, already crossing the room. What happened? Is someone in there? Don't, His voice came out strangled. He cleared his throat, tried again. Don't come any closer. Sadie ignored him completely. She pushed past him into the bathroom doorway, her body tense and ready for a fight. Her eyes scanned the space rapidly. The marble counters, the glass shower, the corners where an intruder might hide. And then she saw it. In the corner of the ceiling, near the light fixture. A spider. A brown spider, no bigger than a dime. It was just sitting there, perfectly still, completely unbothered by the chaos it had apparently caused. Sadie stared at the spider. Then she turned, very slowly, to look at Jared. He was standing several feet back from the bathroom door, his body rigid, his hands clenched at his sides. His face had lost some of its color, and there was genuine discomfort in his expression. This man, this tall, powerful, intimidating billionaire, this man who ran a multi-million-dollar company, who made executives twice his age stutter through presentations, who could buy and sell small countries without blinking. He was seriously rattled by a spider the size of a grape. Sadie pressed her lips together so hard they went numb. Don't, Jared warned, his voice tight. Whatever you're about to say, don't. I wasn't going to say anything. You're laughing at me, I can see it. I'm not laughing. She was absolutely dying inside. Her entire body was shaking with the effort of not laughing. I'm just taking in the situation. She grabbed a tissue from the dispenser, stood on her tiptoes, and calmly captured the tiny creature. It took approximately 3 seconds. She walked to the window, pushed it open, and released the spider into the garden below. There, she said, turning back to face him. Crisis averted. The terrifying beast has been vanquished, Your Majesty. Jared's expression flickered between relief and irritation. It's not... He stopped, ran a hand over his face. It's not funny. I didn't say it was funny. You're thinking it. I'm thinking a lot of things right now, Master Jared. Sadie crossed her arms, leaning against the bathroom doorframe. For instance, I'm thinking about how the big, scary CEO, the man who makes Fortune 500 executives tremble in their designer suits, just got chased out of his own bathroom by an itty-bitty spider. Sadie, I'm also thinking about how that tiny 8-legged creature, approximately the size of a raisin, had you backing up like you were facing down a grizzly bear? Sadie. And I'm thinking, she paused for effect, that this is information I could probably sell to the tabloids for a very nice sum. His eyes narrowed. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? She tilted her head, pretending to consider it. Billionaire CEO terrified of tiny spider, an exclusive tell-all. I bet I could get at least 50,000 for that story. Maybe more if I include dramatic reenactments. For a long, tense moment, they stared at each other. Then something shifted in Jared's expression. The embarrassment faded. The irritation dissolved. And in its place came something that looked almost like amusement. You're enjoying this way too much, he said. Absolutely. This is the highlight of my entire month. I should fire you. You can't fire me. Your uncle paid me for a year, remember? I could pay him back for it and kick you out, or I can let you stay and make your life miserable. You've been trying to do that for 6 weeks. How's that working out for you? He laughed. Not the cold, dismissive laugh she'd heard before. Not the sharp, surprised bark from the night she'd befriended his date. A real laugh, deep and warm and genuine, that transformed his entire face. Sadie felt something flutter in her chest. She wanted to hear him laugh more. She watched his pretty face, capturing the moment as much as she could. His eyes met her suddenly, and she froze, afraid he may have caught her staring. And then he smiled. A small, slow smile that made her heart hammer against her ribcage. She ignored it aggressively. Fine, Jared said, still smiling. You win this round. The spider story stays between us. Agreed. Sadie picked up her cleaning supplies. But you owe me one. I am. And I just saved you from a spider. We're even on the medicine thing. This is a new favor. He shook his head, but the smile stayed on his face. You're impossible. And yet here I am, still employed, still not impressed by you. She headed for the door, then paused. For the record, I'm scared of heights, so if you ever need blackmail material on me, there you go. Heights? Terrified. Can't even climb a stepladder without getting dizzy. Good to know. There was warmth in his voice now, Something almost like affection. I'll keep that in mind. Sadie walked out, hiding her own smile. And something had shifted between them today. She just wasn't sure if that was a good thing or a very, very dangerous one. After the spider incident, everything changed. It started small. The petty complaints stopped. Jared actually ate the meals she prepared without picking at them. He stopped calling her staff and started using her name. Casually, naturally, like they were equals, he ordered her to stop calling him Master Jared, and he started talking to her. Not about anything deep at first, just little things. Comments about news headlines, observations about the weather, questions about her brothers that seemed almost genuine. One Sunday afternoon, Sadie discovered they had something unexpected in common. She was in the staff lounge, a small room off the kitchen that Jared had told her she could use however she wanted, watching the Seahawks game on her laptop. The score was tight, the tension was high, and Sadie was fully invested. Come on, come on, come on. She jumped out of her chair as the receiver made a spectacular diving catch in the end zone. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. You watch football? Sadie spun around, her heart jumping. Jared was standing in the doorway, leaning against the frame with his arms crossed. He was wearing a simple black t-shirt and gray sweatpants, the most casual she'd ever seen him. And the look on his face was genuinely curious. Yes. She felt suddenly self-conscious. Is that a problem? Not at all. He stepped into the room, his eyes moving to her laptop screen. To a Seahawks fan? Born and raised in Washington, it's basically a legal requirement. Season ticket holder myself, lower level, 50-yard line. Of course he was. Must be nice, Sadie muttered, having money to burn. But Jared wasn't listening to her sarcasm. He was watching the replay of the touchdown catch, and there was genuine excitement in his eyes, the most animated she'd ever seen him about anything. That catch was insane, he said. The footwork alone. Right? She agreed quickly, unable to help herself from pitching in. And the way he adjusted mid-air, like he knew exactly where the defender was going to be. The throw was perfect, right in the pocket. Couldn't have placed it better if he'd walked it over. They talked over each other for a solid minute, breaking down the play like two coaches reviewing film. When they finally stopped, both slightly out of breath, Sadie realized Jared was smiling. Really smiling. It changed his whole face, made him look younger, almost boyish. Dangerous, a voice in her head whispered. Very dangerous. You can, She gestured at the chair beside her. Watch here, if you want. The TV in the living room is bigger. Yeah, but then you'd be watching alone. The words were out before she could stop them. Something flickered in Jared's eyes. True, he said quietly, and sat down next to her. They watched the rest of the game together. Jared ordered pizza, regular pizza from a regular delivery place, not some fancy gourmet restaurant, and they ate it straight from the box while yelling at the screen like two kids. When the Seahawks won on a last-second field goal, Sadie leaped up and did a victory dance that involved way too much arm flailing and absolutely zero rhythm. When she finally stopped, breathing hard and grinning like an idiot, she found Jared watching her with an expression that made her stomach flip. What? She demanded, suddenly self-conscious. Nothing. But his eyes were soft, warm. You're just not like anyone I've ever met. Sadie didn't know what to say to that, so she threw a pizza crust at his head instead. From that day on, Sunday football became their thing. They never discussed it, never acknowledged it out loud. But every Sunday, Sadie would set up in the staff lounge with snacks and drinks, and Jared would appear 10 minutes before kickoff like clockwork. Sometimes they argued about plays until they were both red-faced and shouting, and sometimes they agreed so completely that they finished each other's sentences. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence, watching the game, existing in the same space without needing to fill it with words. And slowly, Sunday by Sunday, week by week, the walls between them continued to crumble. Do you see what's happening here? These two stubborn, hard-headed people are falling into a rhythm. They're finding common ground. They're actually enjoying each other's company. If you're feeling the chemistry building between these two, drop slow burn in the comments. And make sure you're subscribed because what happens next is going to change everything. Sadie learned things about Jared that surprised her. He was brilliant, Not just business smart, but genuinely intelligent about a wide range of subjects. He could discuss history, philosophy, art, science. The leather-bound books on his shelves weren't just decoration. They were well worn, their margins filled with notes in his neat handwriting. He was funny, too. His humor was dry and razor-sharp, and once Sadie learned to recognize it, she found herself laughing more than she'd expected. He was kind to his staff, the real staff, the permanent ones who'd been with the family for years. He knew all their names, asked about their families, made sure they were compensated fairly and treated with respect. And he still fed that stray dog. Every evening, like clockwork. Sadie had started watching from the kitchen window, hidden behind the curtain. She'd see Jared slip out the back door with a plate of food, settle onto the steps, and wait patiently until the scraggly brown mutt came limping out of the bushes. He'd talk to it softly, too softly for Sadie to hear the words, while it ate. Sometimes he'd scratch behind its ears. Sometimes he'd just sit there quietly, keeping it company. He never knew she was watching, but she saw. And what she saw made her question everything she thought she knew about Jared Ellison Pierce. Jared, meanwhile, was losing his mind. He'd realized it about 3 weeks after the spider incident. Realized it on a Tuesday afternoon when Sadie had made some sarcastic comment about his coffee preferences, and he'd found himself smiling for no reason 10 minutes later. He was attracted to her, not just physically, though that had surprised him too. He'd spent so long convincing himself she wasn't his type that he'd failed to notice when his type had apparently changed. When had her long legs stopped being too much and started being elegant? When had her sharp cheekbones stopped being too harsh and started being striking? When had her flat chest and narrow hips stopped mattering entirely, replaced by an appreciation for the way she moved so gracefully, the way she laughed, the way she looked at him like he was just a man and not a walking bank account? But it wasn't just physical. It was the way she challenged him. The way she never backed down, never cowered, never let him get away with anything. It was her loyalty to her brothers, the way her voice softened whenever she talked about them. It was her work ethic, her integrity, her absolute refusal to be impressed by his money or his status. It was everything about her, and it was driving him insane. He thought about the bet with his uncle constantly. 6 months. Keep your hands off her for 6 months, or lose his uncle's partnership. At first, it had seemed like the easiest bet in the world. She wasn't his type. He wasn't attracted to her. 6 months of not sleeping with a woman he had no interest in? Child's play. Now he found himself looking for excuses to be in the same room as her. Found himself engineering situations where they'd have to interact. Found himself lying awake at night, thinking about her smile, her laugh, the way she said his name. This was bad. This was very, very bad. The breaking point came on a rainy October evening. There was a charity gala downtown. One of those events Jared couldn't avoid no matter how much he wanted to. He'd asked Sadie to accompany him as his assistant, ostensibly to help manage details. Really, he just wanted her there. He didn't examine that desire too closely. "You'll need to dress up," he'd told her. "Do you own anything that isn't designed for a teenage boy? Do you own anything that isn't designed to make you look like a pretentious snob?" She'd shot back. But she'd found a dress. When she came downstairs that evening, Jared forgot how to breathe. It was a simple black dress. Elegant, understated, nothing flashy. But on her? On her long, lean frame with her sharp cheekbones and her golden brown eyes and that ridiculous punk hair somehow looking exactly right? She was stunning. Not pretty, not attractive. Stunning. "What?" she demanded, self-conscious lie, frowning at his expression. "Is something wrong? Is there something on my face?" Yes, Jared thought. Perfection. That's what's on your face. "You look fine," he managed. "Let's go." "Fine?" She raised an eyebrow. "Wow, such high praise. I'm overwhelmed by your enthusiasm." "You look good, Sadie." The words came out rougher than he intended. "Can we please just go?" She studied him for a moment with those two perceptive eyes. Then she shrugged and headed for the door. Jared followed, trying to ignore the way his heart was pounding. The gala was everything Sadie expected. Chandeliers and champagne and people who had more money than sense. She stayed close to Jared, playing her role as his assistant, watching him transform into someone else entirely. The warmth she'd glimpsed over the past few weeks vanished behind a cold, professional mask. He smiled without meaning it, shook hands without caring, played the game with practiced ease. On 2 hours in, Sadie was exhausted just watching him. She was at the bar getting drinks when she heard it. A woman's voice, smooth, cultured, dripping with false sweetness. "Jared, darling, it's been too long." Sadie turned. The woman was beautiful. There was no other word for it. Late 40s, maybe early 50s, but she looked a decade younger. Tall and elegant with dark skin and silver-streaked hair swept up in an elaborate twist. Her gown was blood red. Her smile was predatory, and she was touching Jared's arm with a familiarity that made Sadie's skin crawl. Sadie watched Jared's reaction carefully. He didn't flinch, didn't back away, but something in his posture changed. A subtle shift, a tightening of his shoulders that most people probably wouldn't notice. Sadie noticed. "Vivian?" His voice was flat, cold. "I didn't know you'd be here." Surprise. The woman, Vivian, stepped closer, her hand sliding up his arm toward his shoulder. "You've been avoiding my calls, darling. It hurts my feelings. We have nothing to discuss." "Don't be like that." Her voice dropped, becoming intimate. "We used to be so close. Don't you remember how close we were?" Something flickered in Jared's eyes, something dark and dangerous. "Remove your hand," he said quietly, "or I'll remove it for you." Vivian laughed, a tinkling, condescending sound. "Still so dramatic. You know, I've always loved that fire in you. Even when you were younger, you had such passion." Jared's jaw tightened until Sadie could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. "Walk away, Vivian, now." "Or what?" Vivian's smile widened, turning cruel. "You'll tell someone? Who would believe you, darling? A strong, handsome man like you? They'd just think you were confused. That's what happens with boys that age. So easily excited, so eager for attention, so easy to—" "Master Jared." Sadie appeared at his elbow, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Both Jared and Vivian turned to look at her. "Your next meeting starts in 10 minutes. Sadie continued smoothly, her expression perfectly professional. "We need to leave now if you want to make it on time." Vivian's eyes narrowed, sweeping over Sadie with obvious disdain. "And who is this?" "His assistant." Sadie met the woman's gaze without flinching. "And you are?" "His stepmother." Vivian's smile returned, sharp as broken glass. "Well, former stepmother. But we're still very close, aren't we? Darling?" "We're nothing," Jared said flatly. "We've been nothing for years, and if you come near me again, you'll find out exactly how much nothing means." He turned and walked away without another word. Sadie followed, but not before catching the look on Vivian's face. It wasn't the expression of a rejected family member. It was the expression of a predator denied its prey. Sadie's blood ran cold. In the car on the way home, Jared was silent. He sat in the back seat with his hands folded in his lap, staring out the window at the rain-blurred city lights. His expression was blank, but his body was coiled tight, vibrating with barely contained tension. Sadie sat beside him, close but not touching, giving him space. "You don't have to tell me anything," she said quietly, "but I'm here, if you want to talk." Silence. The rain drummed against the windows. The city lights blurred past. Jared didn't speak for a long time. When he finally did, his voice was low, controlled, each word carefully measured. "She was married to my father for 5 years. I was 12 when they got married, 17 when he finally divorced her." Sadie's chest tightened. "She was attentive. In the beginning." Jared's jaw worked. "Paid attention to me when my father was too busy with work. Complimented me. Made me feel special, seen." He paused, and when he continued, his voice had hardened into something cold and sharp. "I didn't understand what was happening. I was a kid. I thought that's just how stepmothers were. I thought it was normal." Sadie felt sick. It wasn't until later that I understood what she'd done, what she'd taken from me. His hands clenched in his lap. By then, she'd spent years convincing me it was my fault, that I'd wanted it, that if I ever told anyone, they'd laugh at me. Who would believe a teenage boy was a victim? Who would take my side against a beautiful, sophisticated woman? Jared. That's why I became the way I am. He finally turned to look at her, and his eyes were blazing, not with tears, but with a cold, controlled fury. With women. I couldn't let anyone have that power over me again. So I made sure I was always the one in control. Always the one who used people before they could use me. Always the one who walked away first. It wasn't your fault, Sadie said quietly. You were a child. She was supposed to protect you. I know. His voice was steady, hard. I've spent years in therapy learning that. It doesn't make it easier to live with. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Jared spoke again, and this time there was something different in his voice. Something almost vulnerable beneath the steel. You're the first person I've told. Outside of my therapist. He paused. I don't know why I'm telling you. Maybe because I don't look at you like everyone else does, Sadie said. Maybe because I don't see a billionaire or a CEO or a powerful man. I just see you, whoever that is. He stared at her for a long moment. Whoever that is, he repeated softly. I'm still figuring that out myself. When they got home, Jared walked Sadie to her room. Neither of them spoke as they climbed the stairs and made their way down the hallway. The house was quiet, dark except for the soft glow of nightlights. At her door, Sadie turned to face him. Thank you, she said, for trusting me with that. Thank you for getting me out of there. He was standing close, too close, looking down at her with those dark, intense eyes. For not treating me differently now that you know. Why would I treat you differently? You survived something terrible. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong. Something shifted in his expression. And suddenly, the air between them was charged with electricity. Jared looked at her. Really looked at her. And Sadie felt it like a physical touch. The weight of his attention. The intensity of his focus. Sadie. His voice was rough. Jared. He stepped closer. Close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something expensive and intoxicating. Close enough that she could see the rapid pulse at his throat. Inside Jared's head, like a war was raging. The bet, a voice reminded him. Remember the bet, 6 months, the company. But another voice, louder, more insistent, was drowning it out. She's different. She's real. She sees me. To hell with the bet. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, he said. Not after everything. But He stopped. Started again. I don't want to be alone tonight. Sadie's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. Jared. He leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers, his breath warm against her lips. Just once, he whispered. Just let me. He kissed her. It was soft at first, questioning, giving her every chance to pull away. When she didn't, it deepened. His hand came up to cup her face, his fingers tangled in her short hair. He kissed her like she was precious, like she was worth savoring, like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Sadie felt herself melting into him, felt her own hands gripping his shirt, felt the walls she'd built around herself starting to crumble. And then reality crashed back in. She pulled away, gasping. I can't. Jared stared at her, breathing hard. Sadie, I believe intimacy is for married couples. The words tumbled out in a rush. I know I don't look it. I know I dress like a tomboy and act like one of the guys. But that's what I believe. I can't do this. Not like this. She expected frustration, anger, the return of the cold, dismissive Jared she'd first met. Instead, his expression softened. Not even a kiss? He asked quietly. Sadie hesitated. Then, slowly, she rose on her tiptoes and pressed a gentle kiss to his forehead. That should do, she whispered. When she pulled back, something had changed in Jared's eyes. The want was still there, burning hotter than ever. But it was joined by something deeper now. Something that looked terrifyingly like reverence. Sadie Monroe, he said, his voice rough. You are going to be the absolute death of me. She managed a shaky smile. Good night, Jared. Good night, Sadie. She slipped into her room and closed the door behind her. On the other side, she leaned against the wall, pressing her hands to her burning cheeks. What had she just done? What had they just done? Meanwhile, Jared stood in the hallway, staring at her closed door. His entire body was on fire. Every nerve ending was screaming at him to knock on that door, to convince her, to make her understand how much he needed her. But he didn't. Because for the first time in his adult life, Jared Ellison Pierce had met a woman who made him want to be worthy of her. And that terrified him more than anything. He thought about the bet again. Thought about his uncle's smug face. Thought about the company. Thought about everything he stood to lose. And he realized, with a clarity that shook him to his core, that he didn't care. He'd already lost. Not the bet. Something far more dangerous. His heart. 3 months. That's how long Sadie Monroe had been slowly losing her mind. 3 months of late-night conversations that stretched until dawn, sitting close enough to feel his body heat, but never quite touching. 3 months of Sunday soccer games where their knees would brush on the couch and she'd forget how to breathe. 3 months of stolen glances across the kitchen island, of his eyes lingering on her lips when she talked, of a tension so electric she was surprised the mansion hadn't caught fire. 3 months of wanting Jared Ellison Pierce so badly it physically hurt. And 3 months of reminding herself over and over that she had made a promise to herself, to her faith. Intimacy was for marriage. That was the line she'd drawn years ago, and she wasn't going to cross it, or no matter how much her traitorous body begged her to. The problem was Jared. The problem was the way he looked at her now, like she was the only woman in the world. The problem was his laugh, deep and warm, rumbling through her chest when they sat too close. The problem was his hands, those large, capable hands that she found herself staring at during dinner, wondering what they'd feel like tangled in her hair. Stop it, Sadie. She was losing her grip, and Jared wasn't making it any easier. He hadn't brought any women home since that night at the gala. Not one. His phone, which used to buzz constantly with messages from various companions, had gone completely silent. When Sadie asked about it, he just shrugged, his dark eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her stomach flip. I'm not interested anymore. In women? In anyone who isn't you. He said things like that now, casually, like it was nothing, like he wasn't systematically dismantling every wall she'd ever built around her heart and her self-control. The worst part? He knew exactly what he was doing. She'd catch him smirking sometimes when she'd jolt away from an accidental touch, when their fingers brushed, reaching for the same coffee mug, when he'd lean over her shoulder to look at something on her laptop and his breath would ghost across her neck, making every nerve ending in her body light up like a Christmas tree. He never pushed, never crossed the line, but he walked right up to it, again and again, with that infuriating smile that said he knew precisely what effect he had on her. And Sadie was hanging on by a thread. Drop Stay Strong Sadie in the comments if you're rooting for her not to give in. And keep watching because this is about to get intense. Jared was always doing things that slowly eroded her carefully constructed defenses. Like the time he'd driven 2 hours to Tacoma in the middle of the night because Sadie had gone home to spend the weekend with her brothers, only to find Malachi writhing in pain from a stomach ache. Sadie had panicked, completely lost it. Her hands shook so badly she couldn't even dial 911. All she could think about was her parents, the phone call that had shattered her world, the hospital waiting room, the doctor's face when he'd told her they were gone. She couldn't lose anyone else. She couldn't. And then Jared was there. He'd driven through the night the moment she'd called him, voice breaking. He'd taken over, calm, steady, in control, while she fell apart. He'd carried Malachi to the car, broken every speed limit getting to the hospital, and held Sadie's hand in the waiting room while they waited for news. It was just appendicitis, caught early. Malachi would be fine. But when the doctor delivered the news and Sadie's legs gave out with relief, it was Jared who caught her. Jared who held her while she sobbed into his chest. Jared who stroked her hair and murmured, I've got you, until she could breathe again. And when the hospital bill came, astronomical, even with insurance, Jared paid it without a word. Despite her protests, despite her insistence that she'd pay him back. You're not paying me back, he'd said, his voice leaving no room for argument. Your family is my family now. My end of discussion. Malachi and Micah were her twin brothers, both 18 freshmen at University of Washington on partial scholarships that Sadie had helped fund with the money from this job. They were brilliant, ambitious, and fiercely protective of their big sister. And somehow, against all odds, they'd started to accept Jared. "He's all right," Malachi had admitted grudgingly after the hospital incident. "For a rich dude." "He's more than all right," Micah had added. "He's loaded. Tell him to buy us a car." Sadie had thrown a pillow at his head. But secretly, she'd been glowing. What she hadn't told her brothers, what she'd barely admitted to herself, was that Jared had done something else. Something bigger. He'd found out about her online classes. Sadie had been taking business courses online for 2 years, and slowly working toward a degree she'd never be able to afford to complete properly. She'd dreamed of opening her own security consulting firm someday, combining her martial arts background with business knowledge to help other women feel safe. It was a pipe dream, something to keep her going during long nights and hard days. But Jared had discovered her textbooks, asked questions, listened to her talk about her plans with genuine interest, really listened, the way no one else ever had. And then, without telling her, he'd paid off her remaining tuition and enrolled her in an accelerated program that would let her finish her degree in 8 months instead of 3 years. She'd yelled at him for a solid hour when she found out. You can't just pay for things without asking me." "Why not? You needed it. I have it. It's like simple math." "It's not simple. I don't want to owe you anything." Jared had just looked at her with those infuriatingly calm, dark eyes. "You don't owe me anything, Sadie. I did it because I believe in you. Because your dreams matter. Because—" He'd paused, something vulnerable flickering across his face. "Because I want to be the kind of man who builds people up instead of tearing them down. And you're the one who made me want to be that person." She'd stopped yelling after that. The air between them had gone thick, heavy, charged with something neither of them was ready to name. Sadie had stepped closer without meaning to. Her hand had lifted, trembling slightly, to rest against his chest. She could feel his heart pounding beneath her palm, fast, unsteady, matching her own. His eyes had dropped to her lips. She'd wanted to grab his shirt and pull him down and finally know what those full lips felt like against hers. Instead, she'd risen on her tiptoes and pressed a kiss to his forehead. It was all she would allow herself. But from the way his breath had caught, from the way his hands had fisted at his sides like he was physically restraining himself, she knew it wasn't enough. For either of them. Her heart had been his from that moment on. And her resolve had been crumbling ever since. It was during one of their late-night conversations that Sadie brought up Vivian. They were sitting on the back porch, watching Biscuit, the stray dog Jared had officially adopted, chase fireflies across the lawn. The night was warm, the sky was clear, and they were sitting close. Too close. Sadie could feel the heat radiating off his body. Oz could smell his cologne. Something woody and expensive that made her want to bury her face in his neck and just breathe. "Focus, Sadie. Have you ever thought about reporting her?" she asked, forcing her mind to safer territory. Jared went still beside her. "Reporting who?" "You know who." Sadie kept her voice gentle. "Vivian. What she did to you. It was a crime, Jared. She should face consequences." For a long moment, he didn't respond. When he finally spoke, his voice was measured, thoughtful, not defensive, but certain. "I thought about it, for years actually, especially after I started therapy and realized just how much damage she'd done." He exhaled slowly. "But here's the thing, Sadie. It happened over a decade ago. There's no physical evidence, no witnesses. It would be my word against hers, and she spent years building a reputation as this charming, sophisticated socialite. That's not fair. It's not about fair. It's about reality." He turned to look at her, his dark eyes steady. "If I went public, it would become a media circus. Every detail of my life would be picked apart. My company would suffer. My employees, people who depend on me for their livelihoods, would be affected. And in the end, she'd probably walk away with a slap on the wrist while I'd be destroyed in the court of public opinion. But she deserves to pay for what she did. She will." Jared's voice was calm, certain. People like Vivian can't help themselves. They keep hurting people, keep manipulating, keep taking. Eventually, they cross the wrong person or get caught in the wrong lie. Karma has a way of catching up. He reached over and took her hand. The contact sent electricity shooting up her arm. Sadie had to force herself not to gasp. Their fingers intertwined, his large hand swallowing hers, and she felt that simple touch everywhere. In her chest, in her stomach, in places she was trying very hard not to think about. I spent years letting what she did define me, Jared continued, apparently unaware that he was short-circuiting her brain. Letting it turn me into someone I didn't want to be. But I'm done giving her that power. I'm not going to let her steal any more of my life. Not my peace, not my future, not my happiness. He squeezed her fingers. I'd rather focus on building something good than tearing myself apart trying to destroy her. Sadie studied his face for a long moment. I'm trying to focus on his words instead of the warmth of his palm against hers. This wasn't cowardice. This was a man who had fought through trauma, done the hard work of healing, and made a conscious choice about how to move forward. Okay, she said softly. But if you ever change your mind, I'll be right there beside you. I know. He lifted her hand and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. His lips were soft, warm. They lingered against her skin for a beat too long, and Sadie felt that kiss travel through her entire body like a shockwave. Lord, give me strength. That's one of the many reasons I love you, he said quietly. Sadie's heart stopped. It was the first time he'd said those words. She stared at him, lips parted, completely frozen. The fireflies danced across the lawn. Biscuit barked at something in the bushes. Like the world kept spinning. But Sadie couldn't move. Before she could find words, before she could tell him that she loved him too, that she'd probably been in love with him for months, that every day with him felt like coming home. His expression shifted. That mischievous glint entered his eyes, the one that always meant trouble. Now, we need to talk about this vacation. Sadie blinked, her brain struggling to catch up. What vacation? The one I'm taking you on. 2 weeks, private beach house in the Maldives. Just you, me, and zero responsibilities. The words hit her like a bucket of ice water. 2 weeks, private beach house, just you and me. Sadie's entire body went rigid. No. Jared raised an eyebrow. No? Absolutely not. No way, not happening. She pulled her hand from his and stood up, pacing the length of the porch. Jared, are you insane? I can't. 2 weeks alone with you in a beach house? What's wrong with that? What's wrong with... She stopped, spinning to face him. You know exactly what's wrong with that. He was smiling. Actually smiling. That infuriating, knowing smile that made her want to strangle him and kiss him in equal measure. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. She pointed at him accusingly. You know exactly what you do to me. You've known for months, and you want to trap me on an island with you for 2 weeks? That's cruel and unusual punishment. Jared stood up slowly, that smile still playing on his lips. Sadie, are you saying you don't trust yourself around me? I'm saying I don't trust you around me. I've been a perfect gentleman for 3 months. A perfect gentleman who finds every possible excuse to touch me. Who looks at me like... She gestured wildly, unable to find the words. Like what? Like you're imagining me without my clothes on. The words hung in the air between them. Jared's smile faded, replaced by something darker, more intense. His dark eyes locked onto hers with a heat that made her knees weak. Would you like me to stop? He asked quietly. Looking at you like that? Sadie's mouth went dry. The honest answer was no. God help her. The honest answer was absolutely, definitely, 100% no. But she couldn't say that. My classes, my brothers. She grasped for excuses, any excuse. Your classes are online. You can do them from anywhere with Wi-Fi. He stepped closer and she stepped back, her shoulders hitting the porch railing. And your brothers are grown men in college who can survive 2 weeks without their sister hovering. I don't hover. You absolutely hover. Malachi told me you called him 3 times last week to make sure he was eating vegetables. He lives on ramen and energy drinks. That's not sustainable. Jared laughed. That warm, genuine laugh that always made her stomach flip. He was close now, too close. She could see the individual curls of his fade, the perfect lines of his goatee, the way his dark eyes crinkled at the corners. "The point is," he said softly, "you deserve a break. We both do. And I want to spend 2 uninterrupted weeks with the woman I love." There it was again, on the L word, dropped so casually, like it was nothing. "Please, Sadie." His voice dropped lower, and something in her chest clenched. "Let me do this for you." She should say no. Every logical part of her brain was screaming at her to say no. But when he looked at her like that, like she was precious, like she was everything, her willpower crumbled like sand. "Fine," she heard herself say. "But we're having separate bedrooms." "Of course. And you're keeping your hands to yourself." "I always do. And if you try anything, Sadie." He reached out and tucked a strand of her burgundy hair behind her ear. His fingers brushed her cheek, feather-light, and she shivered despite the warm night. "I would never do anything you didn't want. You know that." The problem was, she wanted. She wanted so badly it was tearing her apart. I know," she whispered. "Then trust me." He stepped back, giving her space to breathe. "Now, about packing. You might need some new clothes. Vacation clothes. I was thinking we could go shopping tomorrow." Sadie groaned, grateful for the subject change. "I hate shopping." "I know." His grin turned mischievous again. "That's what makes this so entertaining for me." The shopping trip started as a disaster. They went to one of those high-end boutiques downtown, the kind with soft lighting and softer music and salespeople who looked at Sadie's cargo shorts like she'd personally offended their ancestors. "Can I help you find something?" The saleswoman's smile was polite, but her eyes were skeptical, traveling up and down Sadie's tall, lean frame like she was already calculating all the ways their clothes wouldn't fit. But Sadie felt herself shrinking, felt all those old insecurities rising up like ghosts she'd thought she'd buried years ago. Too tall, too flat, too boyish, not woman enough. "We're looking for vacation wear," Jared said, his hand finding the small of her back. The touch was brief, reassuring, and Sadie felt herself steady. "Beach clothes, casual outfits, comfortable pieces?" "Of course." The woman's smile brightened considerably when she noticed Jared's expensive watch. "Right this way." The lovely collection was designed for women who were not Sadie. Every sundress assumed curves she didn't have. Every bikini top required a chest that could fill it. Every pair of shorts was cut for hips that would actually hold them up without a belt. Sadie tried on outfit after outfit, each one making her feel more like a child playing dress-up in her mother's clothes. The mirror became her enemy, reflecting back every flaw, every inadequacy, every way she failed to measure up to what a woman was supposed to look like. "This one is cute," the saleswoman said, handing her a flowy maxi dress. "Very flattering for your figure." The hesitation before figure said everything. Sadie took the dress into the fitting room and stared at herself in the mirror. It hung off her like a sack. The built-in bust gaped awkwardly, emphasizing what wasn't there. The waist hit at completely the wrong place, making her look shapeless. The color washed out her honey skin. She looked ridiculous. She looked wrong. Outside, she could hear the saleswoman's voice, high and helpful, thus suggesting strategic ruching and padded options and shapewear that really makes a difference. Each word was a knife. Sadie gripped the edge of the mirror, knuckles white, fighting back the burning in her eyes. She was 24 years old. She'd survived losing both parents. She'd raised her brothers. She'd fought off creeps and worked multiple jobs and clawed her way through every obstacle life had thrown at her. But standing in this fitting room, in this dress that didn't fit, listening to a stranger catalog all the ways her body was wrong, she felt like that 12-year-old girl again. The one who'd stuffed her bra with socks and cried herself to sleep because the boys at school called her surfboard. She'd thought she was past this, thought she'd accepted herself. But the wounds were still there, barely scarred over, bleeding at the slightest touch. Something in Sadie snapped. Not broke. Snapped. Like a rubber band stretched too far, finally letting go. She yanked off the dress, pulled her own clothes back on, and marched out of the fitting room with her chin held high and fire in her eyes. "Sadie?" Jared looked up from his phone, concern immediately crossing his features. "What's wrong?" She didn't answer him. Didn't even slow down. She walked straight past the racks of sundresses and bikinis and flowy tops designed for bodies that weren't hers, past the saleswoman who was already opening her mouth to suggest another option, and into the men's section. Actually, the unisex section. But it was close enough. Jared followed, confusion on his handsome face. "Sadie, what are you?" "Trust me." She moved through the racks with practiced efficiency. Linen shorts in khaki and navy, relaxed fit, comfortable, pockets that could actually hold things. Loose cotton button-downs in white and pale blue. Breathable, easy, no built-in anything to gape at her chest. Chinos that would sit on her waist without needing to be cinched. Tank tops that would drape over her shoulders without trying to create cleavage that didn't exist. The saleswoman had followed, her expression shifting from confusion to horror. "Ma'am, this is the men's section. It's unisex." Sadie didn't look at her. "And these actually have pockets. And they don't assume I need to strap down breasts I don't have or accentuate hips that don't exist." She grabbed more items. A beautiful linen blazer that would fit her shoulders perfectly, her walking shorts in olive and cream, soft cotton tees in muted colors, and headed for the fitting room. Her heart was pounding. Not with anxiety anymore, but with something else. Defiance. Liberation. The fierce, quiet joy of finally choosing herself. 10 minutes later, she emerged. She was wearing the khaki linen shorts. They hit mid-thigh, showing off her long legs without trying to be something they weren't. The white button-down was slightly oversized, sleeves rolled up to her elbows, top 2 buttons undone. It draped over her lean frame like it had been made for her. Because it had been. It was made for a body like hers. Tall, lean, strong. She looked at herself in the mirror outside the fitting room, and for the first time all day, she recognized the woman looking back. This was Sadie. Not a poor imitation of some hourglass ideal, not a failed attempt at conventional femininity. Just Sadie. She turned slowly, and her eyes found Jared. He was staring at her. His dark eyes were wide, lips slightly parted, that usual confident composure completely shattered. His hand had frozen mid-reach for his coffee, suspended in the air like he'd forgotten what he was doing. Like he'd forgotten how to move. Like he'd forgotten everything except her. "Well?" Sadie heard herself ask, voice smaller than she intended. "What do you think?" Jared said nothing. The silence stretched. Sadie's smile faltered. The old insecurities started creeping back in, whispering their familiar poison. "He thinks you look ridiculous. He's trying to find a nice way to say it. You're rambling in your head again," Jared said softly. I can see it in your eyes. Stop." Sadie blinked. "I didn't say anything." "You didn't have to." He set down his coffee and walked toward her, and something in his gaze made her breath catch. "You're standing there, in clothes that finally fit you, looking like the most stunning woman I've ever seen, and you're already convincing yourself that something's wrong, that I'm disappointed, that you're not enough." She couldn't deny it. The words died in her throat. Jared stopped in front of her, close enough to touch, and cupped her face in his hands. His palms were warm against her cheeks, his thumbs brushing gently over her cheekbones. "Sadie Monroe," he said, his voice low and fierce. "You have the most beautiful body I have ever seen." She started to shake her head, but his hands held her steady. "I'm not finished." His dark eyes blazed into hers. "Your legs are incredible, long and strong and elegant. Your shoulders are striking. The way you move, the way you carry yourself, it's mesmerizing. I could watch you walk across a room for the rest of my life and never get tired of it." "Jared, I'm still not finished." A hint of a smile played at his lips, but his eyes remained intense. "I know you think you need curves to be beautiful. I know the world has spent years telling you that you're wrong, that you're less than, that you're not woman enough. But the world is full of idiots, Sadie. And I am not one of them. I used to be, not anymore." Her eyes were burning now. She blinked rapidly, refusing to let the tears fall. "You don't have to hide in these clothes," Jared concluded gently. "I've seen you in a dress, remember? You were stunning." Sadie swallowed hard. "I need you to understand something." "I'm listening." "I don't wear baggy clothes because I'm ashamed. Maybe I used to, when I was younger, when everyone made me feel wrong for not being curvy. But that's not why anymore. She took a breath, steadying herself. I wear them because they're comfortable, because I can move in them, because I spent years trying to perform femininity in ways that never felt right, and these clothes feel like freedom. I actually like how I dress, Jared. It's not a costume or a defense mechanism, it's just me. She met his eyes directly, her chin lifting. So you love me this way, or you drop me. No in between. The words hung in the air between them. Jared's expression didn't change. He didn't flinch, didn't hesitate, didn't look away. Sadie Monroe, he said, on his voice absolute. I am never dropping you. Something in her chest cracked open. Wear men's clothes. Wear unisex clothes. Wear potato sacks and garbage bags and that ridiculous Seahawks jersey with the mustard stain. Hey! Despite everything, a laugh bubbled up. That jersey is lucky. That jersey is a biohazard, and I'm having it burned the moment we get home. You wouldn't dare. Try me. He was grinning now, that full, genuine grin that transformed his whole face. But my point is, I don't care what you wear. I care about you, the real you, the you that's standing in front of me right now, looking like she just conquered the world in linen shorts. Sadie felt warmth bloom in her chest, spreading outward until it filled every corner of her body. But you really mean that? I really mean that. He leaned down and pressed a kiss to her forehead, soft, reverent, lingering. Now grab whatever else you want. We have a vacation to pack for. Sadie grinned and dove back into the unisex section with renewed purpose. She emerged with armfuls of comfortable, beautiful clothes, linen pants in cream and navy, cotton shorts, button-downs in every color, tank tops and blazers and everything she'd need for 2 weeks of tropical bliss. Everything she'd need to feel like herself. The saleswoman looked like she needed smelling salts. Jared just handed over his credit card with a smile that said he'd buy out the entire store if it made Sadie happy. And for the first time in as long as she could remember, Sadie felt beautiful. Not despite her body. Because of it. The news about Jared dating his housekeeper reached Uncle Reg exactly 4 days before the vacation. Sadie was in the kitchen, going over her packing list for the 3rd time. She was nervous, okay? 2 weeks alone with Jared on a tropical island required mental preparation. When she heard the front door bang open with enough force to rattle the chandelier. Jared Ellison Pierce, get down here right now. Sadie exchanged a look with Biscuit, who had wandered in hoping for treats. This should be interesting, she murmured. Biscuit wagged his tail in agreement. By the time she crept toward the foyer, purely for safety reasons, not because she was nosy, Jared was already there, facing his uncle with a suspiciously innocent expression that Sadie had learned meant he was guilty of something. Uncle Reg? His voice was smooth as butter. What a pleasant... Don't. Uncle Reg jabbed a finger at his nephew's chest, his face an alarming shade of red. Don't you pleasant me. I just had lunch with the Hendersons. Do you know what they showed me? Their vacation photos? Gerald does love to talk about that cruise. Pictures, Jared. Pictures of you. Uncle Reg pulled out his phone and shoved it in Jared's face. You and your housekeeper at the country club last weekend, looking at each other like the rest of the world doesn't exist. Like you're 2 seconds away from what, Uncle Reg? Jared's voice was infuriatingly calm. You know what? Uncle Reg threw his hands up, pacing the foyer like a caged lion. I gave you one test. One simple test. Don't sleep with the housekeeper. I haven't slept with her. Uncle Reg stopped mid-pace. What? I said I haven't slept with her. But the pictures, you were practically undressing her with your eyes. Looking is not touching, Uncle Reg. Jared crossed his arms over his chest. I have not laid a single inappropriate hand on Sadie Monroe. We haven't even kissed properly. Uncle Reg stared at his nephew like he'd just announced he was actually 3 raccoons in a trench coat. You... haven't? No. But you're clearly... I mean, the way you were looking at her... Oh, I'm absolutely crazy about her. Jared said it matter-of-factly, like he was discussing the weather. I think about her constantly. I'm completely, embarrassingly head over heels in love with her. Uncle Reg's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. From her hiding spot behind the kitchen doorway, Sadie's heart was pounding so hard she was sure they could hear it. Then why haven't you... Uncle Reg made a vague gesture that somehow managed to be both awkward and explicit. Because she believes intimacy is for marriage. Jared's voice softened. She's a woman of faith, Uncle Reg. She has boundaries, and I respect them. The silence that followed was deafening. Uncle Reg looked like someone had hit him over the head with a frying pan. You, Jared Ellison Pierce, have been dating a woman for 3 months, and you haven't... 3.5 months, actually. 3.5 months? Yes. Without any. Not so much as a real kiss. Jared smiled slightly. She kisses my forehead sometimes. It's incredibly sweet and also slowly driving me insane. But that's beside the point. Uncle Reg sat down heavily on the bottom step of the grand staircase. He looked like a man whose entire understanding of the universe had just been upended. I can't. He ran a hand over his face. Jared, you once slept with a woman because she complimented your watch. I'm not proud of that. You had 3 different housekeepers in your bed in the same month. Also, not proud of that. And now you're telling me you've been dating this woman for 3.5 months and you haven't even kissed her? Properly? Yes, that's correct. Uncle Reg was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, his expression began to change. The shock faded. The disbelief melted away, and in its place came something that looked almost like wonder. Well, he said finally, I'll be absolutely damned. Does this mean I won the bet? Jared asked. Technically, I've kept my hands completely to myself. More than 6 months of self-control, just like you wanted. Forget the bet. Uncle Reg waved his hand dismissively, though a reluctant smile was tugging at his lips. The bet was supposed to teach you self-control, to prove you could see a woman as more than just a conquest. And you... He shook his head in amazement. You actually did it. You actually changed. She changed me, Jared said quietly. Sadie, she's everything, Uncle Reg. She's fierce and funny, and she doesn't take any of my nonsense. She challenges me. She makes me want to be better. His voice dropped. She makes me feel like I might actually be worth something. Uncle Reg stood up slowly, brushing off his pants. It's different this time, he said. It wasn't a question. It's different, Jared confirmed. She's different. This is different. I'm different. She's the one? She's the one. Uncle Reg nodded slowly. Then he turned toward the kitchen doorway. Sadie, I know you're hiding back there. You might as well come out. Caught. Sadie stepped into the foyer, trying to look like she hadn't been eavesdropping on every single word with her heart in her throat. Jared looked like he wanted to faint from embarrassment at her eavesdropping on his confession. He had not noticed her presence at all. Mr. Ellison? Reg, he corrected. His eyes were warm as they traveled over her. Not assessing, but approving. If you're going to marry my nephew, and based on the way he's looking at you right now, that's clearly where this is heading. You can call me Reg. Nobody said anything about marriage. He just called you the one. Uncle Reg smiled. Trust me, with Jared that means something. He walked toward her, stopping close enough to speak quietly. I hired you because I thought you'd be immune to his charm. I thought you'd be the one housekeeper he couldn't seduce, the one woman who'd keep him in line. He chuckled softly. Turns out, you did something even better. You charmed him. You made him want to be worthy of you. Sadie didn't know what to say. Her cheeks were burning. Her eyes were suspiciously wet. I'm happy for you both, Uncle Reg continued. Truly, this is more than I ever hoped for when I brought you here. He turned back to Jared, his expression hardening slightly. But nephew, if you hurt her, if you revert to your old ways, if you break this woman's heart after everything she's clearly invested in you, you'll make my life a living hell, Jared finished. Worse. Uncle Reg's voice was steel. I'll tell your grandmother what really happened to her antique vase. Jared went pale. You wouldn't. Try me. That's cold, Uncle Reg. That's what happens when you mess with someone I've decided to care about. Uncle Reg patted Sadie's shoulder gently, then headed for the door. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go home and tell my wife that our perpetual bachelor nephew has finally, genuinely, actually fallen in love. She's going to lose her entire mind. She might throw a party. There will probably be tears. He paused at the door. Actually, I'm fairly certain I might cry. This is unprecedented. The door closed behind him. Jared turned to Sadie with a grin. That went well. He threatened you with your grandmother's vase. A low blow, but fair. What happened to the vase? We're not talking about the vase. Jared, the vase is not relevant to this conversation. He crossed the foyer and pulled her into his arms, and Sadie went willingly, still laughing. What is relevant is that my uncle just gave us his blessing, and we have a vacation to pack for. Sadie leaned back to look at him, her hands resting on his chest. You called me the one. I did. You told him you were head over heels in love with me. Also true. You said I was everything. Sadie. He cupped her face in his hands, his dark eyes intense and sincere. You are everything. I thought that was obvious by now. She wanted to kiss him so badly it hurt. Instead, she rose on her tiptoes and pressed her lips to his forehead. Soft, lingering, full of promise. Soon, she whispered against his skin. He shuddered. You're killing me. I know. She grinned and stepped out of his arms. Now help me pack. I still don't know which linen shorts to bring. Bring all of them. Jared, I can't bring 8 pairs of shorts for a 2-week trip. You can and you will. I'll buy you a bigger suitcase. You can't solve everything by buying things. Watch me. They argued about luggage all the way up the stairs, and Sadie's heart had never felt so full. Beautiful, sun-soaked crystal water torture. The beach house was ridiculous, of course. Private stretch of white sand. Infinity pool overlooking the ocean. A chef on call, a butler available at the press of a button. More luxury than Sadie had ever experienced in her life. And one very inconvenient problem. The walls were thin. She could hear Jared in the next room. Every night. Moving around, probably shirtless, probably looking like a magazine cover come to life. She'd lie in her massive king-sized bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant sound of waves and the much closer sound of him existing just on the other side of the wall. It was driving her insane. And the days were worse. Because during the days, she actually had to see him. Jared, so rising from the infinity pool like some kind of brown-skinned god, water streaming down his muscular chest, his dark skin glistening in the tropical sun. Jared laughing as he tried to teach her paddleboarding, his hands steadying her hips, his fingers burning through the thin fabric of her shorts. Jared, looking at her in her linen shirt and shorts like she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Every accidental touch was electric. Their hands brushing as they reached for the same mango at breakfast. They'd both jerked back like they'd been shocked, then spent the next 10 minutes aggressively not making eye contact. His fingers grazing her shoulder as he applied sunscreen to her back. She'd practically levitated off the beach chair, and he'd had the audacity to smirk. In their legs tangling underwater when they swam together. She'd both fled to opposite end of the pool, trying not to breathe hard, neither willing to acknowledge what had just happened. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, was that Jared was being a perfect gentleman. He never pushed, never suggested anything, never so much as tried to kiss her. He just looked at her with those dark, intense eyes that promised everything and demanded nothing. It was maddening. By day 5, Sadie was ready to throw herself into the ocean just to cool off. You're staring, Jared said, not looking up from his book. Sadie blinked. What? They were on the deck, watching the sunset, sitting on opposite ends of a very long lounge chair because Sadie had insisted on at least 2 feet of distance between them at all times. You're staring at me. He turned a page casually. You have been for the last 10 minutes. I have not. Your eyes haven't left my chest since I took off my shirt. Sadie's face went hot. I was looking at the sunset. The sunset is behind you. She wanted to die. She wanted the deck to open up and swallow her whole. Jared finally looked up, and the amusement in his eyes made her want to strangle him. Sadie, if this is too hard for you, it's not. We can cut the trip short, go home early. I said it's not. You're gripping that book so hard you're about to tear it in half. Sadie looked down. She was, in fact, white-knuckling a paperback romance novel she'd brought. The poor thing was bent almost in 2. She forced her fingers to relax, forced herself to breathe. I'm fine, she said through gritted teeth. No, perfectly fine. Having a great time. Love the beach, love the sun, love not thinking about... She stopped herself just in time. Love everything about this vacation. Jared's smile was slow and knowing. What were you about to say? Nothing. You were going to say, love not thinking about something. What was it? Nothing. Shut up. Was it me? He sat up, leaning toward her, and the movement made his abs flex in ways that should be illegal. Were you going to say you love not thinking about me? I'm going for a swim. She practically fled to the pool, and his laughter followed her all the way there. That night, lying in bed, Sadie prayed for strength. Lord, she thought desperately, I know I made a promise. I know what I believe. But this man is testing me in ways I never anticipated. Help me stay strong. Help me remember why I set these boundaries. Help me... A knock on her door. Sadie's heart stopped. Sadie? Jared's voice, low and soft through the wood. I saw your light was still on. Everything okay? No, nothing was okay. Nothing had been okay since he'd told her he loved her on that porch. I'm fine, she called back, proud of how steady her voice sounded. Just reading. A pause. Can I come in? Every cell in her body screamed yes. That's probably not a good idea. Another pause. Yeah, you're right. His voice was rougher now, strained. Good night, Sadie. Good night, Jared. She heard his footsteps retreat, heard his door open and close, and she lay there in the dark, aching for something she wasn't allowed to have yet, counting down the days until this exquisite torture was over. The trip was equal parts wonderful and agonizing. They talked for hours about their childhoods, their dreams, the future they were slowly starting to imagine together. Jared told her more about his therapy journey, about the work he'd done to become someone new. Sadie told him about her security consulting dreams, about how she wanted to help other women feel safe. I could fund it, he offered one evening as they watched the sun sink into the ocean. You're firm, when you're ready. Jared, not as charity, as an investment, because I believe in you. She'd kissed his forehead then, soft, lingering, pouring everything she felt into that small gesture. When she pulled back, his eyes were closed, his breathing unsteady. You're killing me, he whispered. You know that, right? I know. She smiled sadly. But it won't be forever. Promise? Promise. Listen, I need everyone to appreciate the restraint these two are showing. Two people, madly in love, alone on a tropical island for 2 weeks, and they're keeping their hands to themselves because she made a promise to herself about her values. That is what real love looks like. Real love waits. Real love respects boundaries. Real love says, I want you, but I want what's best for you more. If you're rooting for these two to get their happily ever after, drop worth the wait in the comments. But a few weeks later, someone burst their perfect bubble. Sadie wasn't supposed to be at the mansion that day. She'd gone to handle paperwork for her brothers, scholarship renewals, housing applications, the endless bureaucracy of college life. But she finished early and stopped by to grab vacation photos from her quarters. She let herself in through the back. The house was quiet. Jared was supposed to be at the office. She was halfway up the stairs when she heard it. A woman's voice from Jared's bedroom. Jared, honey, where are the towels? I need to shower. Sadie's blood turned to ice. She moved toward the voice on autopilot, her mind going blank, her body operating on pure instinct. Jared's bedroom door was open. And standing there, wearing Jared's blue dress shirt, the one Sadie had bought him for his birthday, was the most beautiful woman she'd ever seen. Tall, curvy, perfect hourglass figure, flawless dark skin, long braids cascading down her back. Everything Sadie wasn't. The woman spotted her and smiled warmly. Oh, you must be Sadie. Jared talks about you all the time. Sadie didn't wait to hear the rest. She ran, down the stairs, out the door, into her car. She drove home blinded by tears, ignoring the flood of calls lighting up her phone screen. Of course this was how it ended. She'd known better. Deep down, she'd always known. Men like Jared didn't end up with women like her. She was the placeholder, The challenge. The woman who was different enough to be interesting. But when it came down to it, they always went back to the curves. The conventional beauty. The women who actually looked like women. Sadie had been fooling herself to think she could ever be enough. Her brothers found her on the couch an hour later, wrapped in their mother's old quilt, tears dried to nothing but emptiness. "Who do we need to hurt?" Micah asked seriously. Despite everything, Sadie almost smiled. "No one." "Lies." Malachi crossed his arms over his chest. "Someone made our sister cry. That means someone's about to have a very bad day." So she told them. When she finished, both boys were vibrating with barely contained fury. "I'm ending him," Malachi announced flatly. "I've watched enough crime documentaries to know how to get away with it." "First punch is mine," Micah growled. "Then you can have what's left." The doorbell rang. "If that's him," Micah said quietly, "I'm not responsible for what happens." "Get the door," Sadie said tiredly. She didn't have the energy to deal with this herself. Her brothers positioned themselves like a wall of righteous fury. Two tall, protective 18-year-olds ready to throw hands with a billionaire. Malachi yanked the door open. Jared stood there looking completely wrecked, disheveled, wild-eyed. His usually immaculate shirt was untucked, his fade slightly mussed, like he'd been running his hands through his hair in panic. "Sadie." Relief flooded his voice when he spotted her over the twins' shoulders. "Thank God. You weren't answering. I need to explain." "You need to leave." Malachi's voice could freeze fire. "That woman is my cousin." "Your cousin." Malachi's tone dripped with sarcasm. "Right, that's original. Her name is Morgan Ellison. She's Uncle Reg's oldest daughter. Her hotel had a gas leak, so she called me. I wasn't even home when she arrived. I was at the office. I didn't know you'd come by. I didn't know." His voice cracked. "This is a misunderstanding. Please, check her Instagram, check our family photos, call my uncle. I can prove it." "Let me see." Sadie had moved to stand behind her brothers, arms wrapped around herself. Jared handed over his phone without hesitation. She scrolled through Morgan's Instagram with numb fingers. The photos told a clear story. Morgan Ellison, Uncle Reg's daughter, Jared's first cousin. Family dinners, birthday parties, holiday gatherings, a lifetime of proof. She looked up at him, feeling her face heat with embarrassment. She hated being dramatic, hated losing control. And she'd just run out of the house like some kind of jealous. "You could have called when you found out she was staying," she said quietly. "I should have. I'm sorry. I rushed over the moment she called to help her settle in, knowing you were off today, and I didn't think—" He stopped, shaking his head. "It's not an excuse. I should have communicated. But Sadie, I promise, there's no one else. There hasn't been anyone else since I met you. There will never be anyone else." Sadie stared at him, at the desperation in his dark eyes, at the love written across every line of his face. "This is embarrassing," she admitted. "I don't usually act like this." "I know." A hint of his old smirk appeared. "You're usually too tough for dramatics." "I should have called too. Barging in like that wasn't right." "It's our house," he said softly. "You can barge in anytime you want." "Our house." He'd said, "Our house." Behind her, Micah whispered, "That was actually pretty smooth." "Shut up," Malachi whispered back. But Sadie wasn't listening to her brothers. She was looking at Jared, at the man who had fought so hard to change, who had shown her again and again, that he was different now. "Come here," she said. He crossed the space in 3 steps, and then his arms were around her and everything wrong was suddenly right again. "I'm sorry," he murmured into her hair. "I never want to make you feel that way again." "You better not." But she was smiling against his chest. "And you owe my brothers an apology for making them see me cry." Jared looked at the twins over her shoulder. "I'm sorry. It won't happen again." "It better not." Malachi cracked his knuckles meaningfully. "I wasn't joking about the crime documentaries." Noted. Later that night, after Jared had survived her brother's intense interrogation, which included questions about his income, his intentions, his credit score, and whether he could beat them both in a fight, he wisely declined to answer that last one. They sat on her tiny apartment balcony looking at the stars. The night was quiet, peaceful. A gentle breeze carried the distant sound of the city. "I almost lost you today," Jared said softly. "But you didn't. Because you gave me a chance to explain." He pulled her closer, her back against his chest, his arms wrapped around her waist. "Thank you for trusting me." Sadie leaned into him, feeling his heartbeat steady against her spine. "Thank you for being worth trusting." Comfortable silence settled over them. Perfect. Complete. "Sadie?" "I have a question." Something in his voice made her tense. It was too casual, too deliberate, like he was trying very hard to sound relaxed while his heart was pounding out of his chest. Okay." He shifted behind her, and suddenly she wasn't leaning against his chest anymore. He was moving, turning her around to face him, and he was on one knee. On her tiny apartment balcony, under the stars, Jared Ellison Pierce was on one knee. "Oh my God," Sadie breathed. He pulled out a small velvet box, opened it. Inside was the most beautiful ring she'd ever seen. Simple, elegant, a single diamond that caught the starlight like it was made of captured moonbeams. "Sadie Monroe," he said, his voice rough with emotion. Is this because you want to sleep with me?" The words burst out before she could stop them. Jared blinked. Then, incredibly, he laughed. Sadie's face was burning. I want to make sure you're not just because we've been waiting, and I know it's been hard. And if you're just proposing so we can finally... Sadie. Because I need to know this is real, Jared. I need to know you actually want me, not just... Sadie. He caught her hands, steadying her. His dark eyes were warm with amusement and something deeper. Am I proposing so we can finally be together? Honestly? She nodded, unable to speak. "Yes," he said simply. "Partly." Her heart sank. "I'm not going to lie to you," he continued. "These past few months have been the most exquisite torture of my life. I think about you constantly. I dream about you. I want you so badly it physically hurts." His thumb stroked over her knuckles. "So yes, part of me is proposing because I cannot wait another day to make you mine in every way possible." Sadie's breath caught. "But that's not all of it." His voice softened. "That's not even most of it." He stood up, pulling her to her feet, the ring box still open in his hand. "I want to marry you because you make my world brighter," he said. "Because before you, everything was gray, and now there's color everywhere I look. Because you challenge me and frustrate me and make me want to be a better man every single day." Sadie's eyes were burning. "I want to marry you because I want to build a life with you, a real life. I want to come home to you. I want to argue with you about whose turn it is to walk biscuit. I want to watch soccer games on Sunday and yell at the TV together." He smiled, and there was something almost shy in it. "I want to have kids with you. I want to watch our children grow up. They'll probably be soccer players, with our combined obsession, as they won't have a choice." Sadie laughed through the tears that were now streaming down her face. "I want to grow old with you. I want to be the one who kills the spiders for you. You're terrified of spiders, which is exactly why I need you. You're my designated spider guard. I can't lose that." He cupped her face in his free hand, wiping away her tears with his thumb. "And most importantly, I want to marry you because since the day I fell for you, every other woman on this planet ceased to exist for me. There's just you, Sadie. There will only ever be you." Sadie was full-on sobbing now, ugly crying. The kind of crying that should be embarrassing but somehow wasn't, because Jared was looking at her like she was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen, tear-streaked face and all. "So," he said softly, holding up the ring. "Naka Sadie Monroe. Will you marry me? Not just so I can finally kiss you properly, although I really, really want to do that, but because I want to spend the rest of my life loving you?" Sadie tried to speak. Failed. Tried again. "Yes," she managed. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." His face broke into the most radiant smile she'd ever seen. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, of course it did. And then he straightened, looking at her with such love it made her chest ache. "Can I kiss your forehead now?" he asked softly, already leaning in. I know we're waiting for the wedding for anything more, so… No. He froze. Sadie reached up, grabbed his shirt, and pulled him down until their faces were inches apart. "Kiss my lips," she whispered. Jared's eyes went dark. "Sadie, I've been wanting to kiss you for months. We're engaged now. I think we can handle a kiss." She smiled, suddenly shy. "Unless you don't want to." "Don't want to?" His voice was strained. "Woman, I have been dreaming about kissing you since the day you saved me from that spider." "Then stop talking and…" He kissed her, and the world exploded. His lips were soft and warm and perfect. His hands cradled her face like she was precious, like she was everything. He kissed her slowly, thoroughly, like he was memorizing the shape of her mouth. Sadie melted into him, her hands fisted in his shirt. Her heart soared. This was worth waiting for. He was worth waiting for. When they finally broke apart, both of them breathing hard, Jared rested his forehead against hers. "Worth the wait?" he asked, voice rough. "So worth the wait," she breathed. He kissed her again, and again, and again, until her brothers started banging on the balcony door, yelling that they could see them through the glass and could they please stop being disgusting in front of the minors. They were married 3 months later. The wedding was exactly what Sadie had always dreamed of, even though she hadn't known she was dreaming of it until it happened. She didn't wear a dress. Instead, she walked down the aisle in a stunning white unisex suit, custom-tailored to fit her tall, lean frame perfectly. The jacket had subtle feminine touches, a nipped waist, elegant lapels, without betraying who she was. The pants were wide-legged and flowing, comfortable enough to move in, beautiful enough to steal the breath from every person in that church. And the train. Oh, the train. It flowed from the back of the jacket, on yards and yards of white silk that cascaded behind her like a waterfall. Traditional yet unexpected. Feminine yet powerful. Completely, utterly Sadie. When Jared saw her coming down the aisle, when his eyes went wide and his breath caught and a single tear slid down his cheek, she knew she'd made the right choice. She didn't have to be anyone else to be a bride. She just had to be herself. "You're stunning," he whispered when she reached him. "You're not so bad yourself," she whispered back. They exchanged vows. They exchanged rings. They exchanged promises to love each other for better or worse, in sickness and in health, through spider invasions and soccer game arguments and all the beautiful chaos of a shared life. And when the officiant said, "You may now kiss the bride," Jared didn't wait for permission, and he pulled her close and kissed her like the world was ending and beginning all at once. The church erupted in cheers. Somewhere in the crowd, Uncle Reg was crying. Malachi and Micah were wolf whistling. When they finally broke apart, Sadie was laughing. "I love you," she said. "I love you too," Jared replied. "Now let's go start our life together." And they did. Beautiful people. That's the end of Sadie and Jared's story. But really, it's just their beginning. Two stubborn, imperfect people who found healing in each other. Here's what this story taught us. Your worth isn't determined by your body, your clothes, or fitting someone else's standard. You are enough, exactly as you are. The right person will see that and celebrate it. And if you choose to wait for marriage, that's beautiful. That's valid. That's your choice to make. Odds drop happily ever after if you rode with Sadie and Jared from the beginning. Drop worth the wait if their journey touched your heart. Subscribe for more stories like this, and share this with someone who needs to know they're worthy of love, exactly as they are. Until next time.